Okay, I think we are live. Let me search. Okay, so we are live, guys. Welcome back. Let me put some music. Wait a second. That's fantastic. So, guys, welcome back. It's been a long time since I have one live. So, this day. Okay. So, today we are going to check out React.js, like probably some interview questions, and probably we will be trying to set up some projects using React. And let's get started. Right now it's a React documentation, and let's have a quick start. So welcome to React documentation. This page will give you introduction to 80% of the React concepts that you will use on a daily basis. Okay, you will learn how to create and nest components. Okay, how to add markup and styles, how to display data, how to render conditions and list, how to respond to events and update the screen, how to share data between components. Okay. So creating and nested components. React apps are made out of components. A component is a piece of UI that has its own logics and appearance. A component can be as small as a button or as large as an entire page. React components are JavaScript functions that return markup. Okay, this is the markup it's returning. Now that you have declared my button, you can nest it into another component. Like you are nesting it into another component, which is h1. H1 is one component and my button is another component. Notice then my button starts with a capital letter. That's how you know it's a React component. Okay, this is a React component and this must be HTML component, like h1. Okay, React component name must always start with a capital letter, while HTML tags must be lowercase. Okay, have a look at the result. Okay, this will create one h1 tag and a button. Okay, that's fine. To export default keywords, specify the main component of file. If you are not familiar with piece of JavaScript syntax, MDN and JavaScript info have great reference. Okay, so yeah, this is app.js file. Here the export default is my app. Okay, it's a export default. Okay, got it. Writing markup with JSX. The markup syntax you have seen above is called JSX. Okay, this is called a JSX. It is optional, but most React projects use JSX for its convenience. All of the tools we recommend for local development support JSX out of the box. JSX is stricter than HTML. You have to close tags like BR. BR is for line break, I think. Let me search. It is slow. I don't know. Okay. Yeah. It's a line break element. Forcing content that follows to start in a new line without breaking the context of the current paragraph or block. Okay. Your component also can't return multiple JSX tags. You have to wrap them in a shared parent like div or an MD wrapper. Okay. This MD wrapper is called a fragment, I think. Functions. Okay. If you have lot of HTML to pull to JSX, you can use a online converter. what is this online converter? Okay. It's just add tags. What's the difference? If you have a lot of HTML proto to HTML to port to JSX, okay. Anyway, I'll leave that. Adding styles in React, you can specify CSS class with class name. It works the same way as the HTML class attribute. Okay, img class name equal to avatar. When you write the CSS rule for it, it separates CSS file. Then you write CSS rule for it in a separate CSS file. Okay, in your CSS we write avatar. Okay, React does not prescribe how you add CSS file. Okay, we can add however we want. In simplest case, you can add a link tag to HTML if you use build tool or framework. Consult its document to learn how to add CSS file to your project. Okay, we'll be using CSS file for styling it. And displaying data. JSX lets you put markup into JavaScript, obviously. Curly braces let you escape back into JavaScript so that you can embed some variables from your code and display it for the user. For example, this will display user.name. Okay, we already know this is we are typing HTML. In between we need to use some JavaScript, then we can put a double curly braces to get the variable name. Okay, you can also escape into JavaScript from JSX attribute. Okay, you can also escape into JavaScript from JSX attribute, but you have to use curly braces instead of quotes. For example, class name passes avatar. Okay, string as CSS attribute, but str equal to reads JavaScript. Okay, but src equal to user.image URL reads the JavaScript user.image URL variable value, then passes the value to the str attribute. Okay, okay, here we have used double quotes to pass avatar, but we need to pass the image URL, so we just use a curly bracket to send the image URL. Okay, you can put more complex expression inside the JSX, for example string concatenation. Okay, like this we can do. In the above example, style is not a special syntax but a regular curly braces object inside the style. Inside the style JSX curly braces, you can use the style attribute when new style depends on JavaScript variables. Okay, it's not a special syntax, it's a regular object inside the regular object inside the style. Okay, so this is actually object inside the style. You can use style attribute when you style depends on JavaScript variables. Okay, conditional rendering. In React there is no special syntax for writing conditions. Instead, you will use the same technique as you use when writing regular JavaScript code. For example, you can use if statement to conditionally include JSX. Okay, let if login content equal to admin panel, else login form. Okay, and we just load the content. Okay, got it. So if you prefer more compact code, you can use conditional operator, unlike if, which works inside JSX. Okay, we can shorten this into like If logged in, then load admin banner, else load login form. Okay. When you don't need the else branch, you can also use a shorter logic and operation. Suppose we don't want to care, we don't care about what happens if this user is not logged in. We can use is logged in show admin banner. So this will display admin banner only if user is logged in. All the approaches to work or conditionally specify attribute. If you are unfamiliar with some of these JavaScript syntax, you can always you can start by always using if else. Okay. If you're not sure about these conditional shorthands, you can always use if else. Rendering list. If you rely on JavaScript features like for loop and array.map functions to render list components, for example, let's say you have an array of products equal to cabbage, garlic, apple. The component use map function to transform array products into an list items. Okay, we can use the map function to manipulate the array. So as here we can see list item products dot map, we are converting these into a list items. Notice how LI has a key attribute. For each item in the list, you should pass a string or a number that is uniquely identifies the item among the siblings. Usually key should be coming from your data, such as database ID. React uses keys to know what happened if you later insert, delete or render the item. Okay, so React is using this ID for the use of rendering and stuff like that. So we should be using the index value for key element. Okay, responding to events. You can respond to event by declaring event handler functions inside your component. Okay, so this is my button component. Here we can add a function called handle button click, and here we can type on button click. We just invoke this handle click. Notice how on click has no parenthesis at the end. Do not call the event handler function. You need to only pass it down. React will call your event handler when the user clicks the button. Okay, so if you are typing it like with a parenthesis, then it will get automatically invoked when rendering. So don't put the curly bracket, sorry, the parenthesis. Updating the screen. Often you want your component to remember some of the information and display it. For example, maybe you want to count the number of times a button is clicked. To do this, add states to your component. First, import useState from React. So we'll be importing useState from the React. Now you can declare the state variable inside your component. Okay, this is my button component, and inside that we are declaring count, and we are extracting the variables or the array elements. So useEffect is basically useState is a array of elements, and its first element is count and second element is set count function. Okay, let's see. Now you can declare a state variable inside your component, and this is the state variable we declared. You get two things from useState: the current state count and the function that lets you update it, set count. You can give them any names, but the convention is to write something and set something. The first time the button is displayed, count will be 0 because you pass 0 to useState. So we can see we are passing 0, so the first initial value will be 0. When you want to change the state, use state, call set state and pass the value to it. So if you want to change the value, you can call the set state and pass the new value to it. Clicking the button will increment the counter. Okay, here we can see it says an on click button. On clicking this, the handle click will be, so handle click is here. So when the user clicks the button, the handle click will get invoked, and from there the set count is getting triggered. So when this, okay, let's go yeah, and it will update the state. React will call your component function again. This time count would be 1. When it will become, then it will become 2, and so on. If you render the component multiple times, each will get its own state. Click each button separately. As we can see, each time when we are clicking, each button has its own state. We had 2 buttons, and this button has a state inside it. That's why it's happening like this. Notice how each button remembers its own count and state and doesn't affect other button. Okay, we have seen that. Using hooks. Functions that start with use are called hooks. Use state is a built-in hook provided by React. You can find other built-in hooks in API reference. You can also write your own hooks by combining existing ones. Hooks are most restrictive than other functions. You can only call hooks at the top of your component or other hooks. If you want to use state in your condition or a loop, extract a new component and put it there. Okay, I didn't get that part. Let's read it again. A function starting with use are called hooks. Okay. Use state is a built-in hook that provided by React. Okay. You can find other built-in hooks in API reference. Okay, there can be multiple hooks, like built-in hooks. You can also create your own hooks by combining existing ones. So you can create your own hooks by combining existing hooks. Okay. Hooks are more restrictive than other functions. Okay. If you can only call hooks at the top of your component. Okay, you can only call the hooks at top of your component or other hooks. If you want to use state in other condition or a loop, extract a new component and put it there. Okay, let's see. Sharing data between components. In the previous example, each button has its own independent count, and when each button was clicked, only the count of the button click changed. Okay, like this diagram show, initially 0 when clicked there, but okay. However, often we need component to share data and always update together. To make my button component display same count and update together, we need to move the state from individual button upwards to the closest component controlling them. This is an example. Okay. You can move the count to upper. Okay. So when you click the button, the count in my app change, and which will change both counts in my button. There is, however, here is how you can express this in the code. First, move the state app from my button to app. Okay, we can see my app is having the count and set count, and is also having the function handle click. Okay, and to the button we are passing the count, and on click handle click is getting passed. Okay, in the button we have, okay, declaring. Okay, okay, yeah, sure. Okay. Okay, then pass the state down to my app to each my button. Together with the shared click handler, you can pass information to my button using JSX curly braces. Just like you previously did with the built-in tag image. The information you pass down like this is called probes. So these are probes. Now my app component contains the count state and handle click event handler. Okay. and pass both of them down as probes to each of the buttons. Finally, change my button to read the probes so you have passed from its parent component. When you click the button, the on-click handler fires. Each button's on-click probe was set to the handle click function inside my app. So code inside of it runs. That code calls set count plus one, incrementing the count state variable. The new count value is passed as probe to each button, so they all show the new value. This is called lifting state up. Okay, lifting state up. Okay. By moving state up, you have shared it between components. Okay, we can see that. Next step, by now you know the basics how to write a React code. Check the tutorial to put in practice. Okay. So tutorial tic-tac-toe. So you will build a small tic-tac-toe game during this tutorial. This tutorial does not assume any existing React knowledge. Technique you will learn in this tutorial are fundamental to building any React app. And fully understanding it will give you a deep understanding of React. Note, this tutorial is designed for people who prefer to learn by doing and want to quickly try something tangible. If you prefer learning concepts step by step, start with describing UI. Okay, I think we should start by describing UI. Okay. Anyway, let's go through this quickly. So tutorial deep dive into several section. Setup of tutorial will give you a starting point on how to follow tutorial. Overview will teach you a fundamentals of React component process state. Complete the game will teach you most common techniques in React development. Adding time travel will give you a deeper insights of the unique strength of React. What are you building? In this tutorial, you will build an interactive tic-tac-toe game with React. You can see what it will look like when you are finished. Okay. Okay, that's interesting. Wow, that's pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. Okay, let's go to the code quickly. Where is it? Okay, game. Okay, function square. Okay, value square. Okay, board. Okay. If your code doesn't make if the code doesn't make sense to you, or if you are unfamiliar with the code syntax, don't worry. The goal of the tutorial is to help you understand React and its syntax. We recommend you to check out the tic-tac-toe game above before continuing the tutorial. One of the features that you will notice is that there is a number list right of the game board. This list gives you a history of all the moves that have occurred in the game, and it will update as the game progresses. Once you played around to finish tic-tac-toe game, keep scrolling. You start with a simple. Once you played around and finish tic-tac-toe game, keep scrolling. You will start with a simpler template of this tutorial. Our next step is to set up so that you can start building the game. Set up the tutorial. In the live code editor below, click the fork on the right top corner of the editor in the tab using the website Code Sandbox. Code Sandbox lets you write in your browser and preview them when user will see the app you have created. Browser and preview how your user will see the app you have created. The new tab should display an empty square and the starter code in this tutorial. Okay. Wait a second. I just forgot or something. I think I have put the name of this live something wrong. Yes, I don't care. Note, you can follow the tutorial using your local development. To do this, you need to install Node.js Code Sandbox tab. In the Code Sandbox tab, you opened earlier. Press the top left corner of the button to open the menu, and then you can choose download Sandbox in the menu to download an archive of the files and archive of the files locally. I still don't understand why it's called archive. Let me search that quick. So archive means to store the file in a safe place for a long time keeping instead of using them actively. Simple archive is store plus organize or keep it for later. Okay, archive the files locally, save in a computer, often compressive file, so you can, yeah, okay. Okay, good. That's why it's called archive. Okay. Unzip the archive and then open in a terminal and cd into the directory you unzip. Install the dependency with npm install. Run npm start to start the local server and follow the prompt to view the code running in your browser. If you get stuck, don't let this stop you. Follow along online instead of trying a local setup again. Okay, if you're stuck, you can continue with the okay. Now you have set up. Let's get an overview of React. In inspecting the starter code. Okay. Files section list of files like app.js, index.js, and style.css in the src folder and the folder called public. The code editor where you see the source code is the code editor where you see the source code of your selector file. The browsers section where you see how the code you have written will be displayed. The app.js, this should be the this file should be selected in the files section. The content of the file is the code editor should be. The contents of that file in the code editor should be. Okay. This should be content. And the browser session should display a square with an X like this. Now let's look at the files in the starter code app.js. This the code in app.js creates a component in React. A component is a piece of reusable code that represents a part of user interface. Components are used to render, manage, and update UI elements on your application. Let's look at how component line by line to see what's going on. Okay, it's too much. I think it's so long. Okay. Okay, here why this doesn't work. Handle zero click call the part of rendering board component because alters the state of the board completely. Calling set square, your entire board component will re-render again, but this runs again, leading to an infinite loop. Okay. Oh, Why didn't this problem happen earlier? When you are passing a handle click, you were passing the handle click function down as a prop. You were not calling it, but now you are calling that function right away. Notice the parenthesis, so it runs early. You don't want to call it handle click until the user clicks. You should fix this by creating a function like first square click that handle first square click that calls okay, handle click. A function like handles square, a function like second square click that handles that calls handle click one, so on. You would pass rather than call these functions as prop, like one square handle first square click. This would solve the infinite. However, defining function and giving each the main name is to where bros. Okay. Instead, let's do this. Notice the new this arrow syntax here. Handle kick is arrow function, which is shorthand way to define functions. When you square is click, the code after the arrow will run, calling handle click. Now you need to update the age square. Okay, we just updated. Okay, got it. In the user upper left corner, change no DOM. Butter elements on click attribute has special meaning to React because it is a built-in component. For custom component like Square, the naming is to you. You could give any name to the Square's on click probe or board's handle click function. The code would work the same. In React, conventional to use on something named to probes which represent events and handle something for the function definitions which handle those events. Note how in handle click you call dot slice to create a copy of square array instead of modifying the existing array. To explain why, we need to discuss immutability and why immutability is important to learn. There is generally two approaches to change data. The first approach is to mutate the data by directly changing the data values. The second approach is to replace the data with a new copy of which has desired data changes. This is what it would look like if you mutate the square array. Square null, you are setting this, okay. And here is what it is look like if you change the data without mutating the square array. The result is changed, but you are not mutating, changing the underlying data, okay, directly. You gain several benefits. Immutability makes complex features easier to implement. Later in this tutorial, you will see implement a time travel feature that lets you review the game history and jump back to past moves. This functionality isn't specific to games. It's the ability to undo and redo certain actions in a common requirement for apps. Avoiding direct data mutation lets you keep previous version of the data intact and reuse them later. There is also another benefit of mutability. By default, all the child components re-render automatically when state of the parent component changes. This includes even the child component that weren't affected by the change. Although re-rendering is not by its noticeable to the user, you shouldn't actively try to avoid it. You might want to skip re-rendering a part of the tree that's clearly wasn't affected by its. There are also another benefit of immutable. There is also another benefit of immutability. By default, all child components re-render automatically when state of a parent component changes. This includes even the child components that weren't affected by this change. Although re-rendering is not by itself noticeable to the user, you shouldn't actively you shouldn't actively try to avoid it. You might want to skip re-rendering a part of the tree that clearly wasn't affected by it for performance reasons. Immutability makes it very cheap for components to compare whether their data was changed or not. You can learn more about re-rendering components in the Memo APA reference. Okay, taking turn. It does not matter whether you define calculate winner before or after the board. Let's put it at the end so you don't have to scroll past everything. Okay. You have mutated the square array. Implemented time travel would if you mutate the square array, implementing the time travel will be very difficult. However, since you use slice to create a new copy of square array after every move and treated it as immutable, this will allow us to store every past versions of array and navigate it between the turns that have already happened. You will store the past square you will store the past square array in another array called history, which you will store a new state variable, and the history array represent all the board state from first to last move and has a shape like this. Lifting up the state again. You will now write new top level component called game to display the list of past moves. This is where you will place the history state that contains the entire game history. Place the history state into the game component will let you remove the square state from the child board component. Just like you uplifted from the square component to the board component, you will now lift it from the board into the top level game component. This gives the game component full control over the board data and lets it instruct the board uh, render previous turns from the history. First, add the game components uh, and export default, have it render the board completely and some markup. Okay. Okay, is next. Is next. Okay, history user a dot fill with. Okay. Notice how array of 9. Okay, to render a square of current move, you want to read the last square from the history, and you don't need to use state in for this. You already have enough information to calculate during re-render. Current square equal to history. Okay. Next, handle play function inside the game will be called and the center board component updated and see next. Okay. I don't get it. When you render a list, React stores some information about each rendered list item. When you update the list, React need to determine what has changed. You could have added, remove, rearranged, or update the list item. You could have removed, rearranged, or updated the list item. Imagine transforming. In addition to updating counts, a human reading this would probably say that you swapped Alexa and Ben's order and inserted Claudia between Alexa and Ben. However, React is a computer program and doesn't know what you have intended. So you need to specify a key property for each list item to differentiate each item from its siblings. If your data was from a database, Alexa, Ben, and Claudia database ID could be used as keys. When a list is re-rendered, React takes each list from item key and searches the previous item for matching key, and it current list as a key and that doesn't exist before. React creates a component. If the current list is missing a key that existed in the previous list, React destroys the previous component. If two keys match, then the corresponding components are moved. Okay, key tells React about the identity of each component, which allow React to maintain state before re-render. If a component key changes, component will be destroyed and recreated with the new state. Key is a special reserved property in React. When an element is created, React extracts the key property and stores the key directly on the returned element. Even though key may not look like a past props, React automatically uses key to decide which component to update. There are no way for component to ask what key its parent specified. It's strongly recommended that you assign key property whenever you build dynamic list. If you don't have an appropriate key, you may want to consider restructuring your data that you do. If no key is specified, React will report an error and use the array index as key by default. Using the array index as key is problematic when you're trying to reorder a list of items or inserting or moving item, especially passing key of I slices the error, but the same problem, but same as the problems as array indices and is not recommended in most cases. Key does not need to be a globally unique. They only need to be unique when components and siblings. Okay. Implementing time travel. Okay. If you have extra time and want to practice tic-tac-toe, your new React skills, here is some ideas to improve. For a current move, show your move hash instead of a button. You move for the current move. Rewrite board to use two loops and make square instead of hard coding them. Add toggle button that lets you sort the moves in either ascending or descending order. Okay. When someone wins, highlight 3 squares that okay. Display the location of each move in a format row column in each move history list. Throughout this tutorial, you have touched on React concepts, including element, component, props, states. Now you have seen these concepts work in building a game. Check out Thinking in React to see how the same React concept works in building an app. Thinking in React. React can change how you think about designs. You look designs that you look at and the apps you build. When you build an user interface with React, you first break it in apart into pieces called components. Then you will describe what's a different visual state for each components. Finally, you will connect your component together so that the data flows through them. In this tutorial, we will guide you through the thought process of building a searchable product table with React. Okay, wait a second. Yeah, sorry for the delay, guys. So I just ordered my lunch. That's why. Okay, lunch will be arriving in 27 minutes. So we'll be ending the live in 27 minutes or so. Okay. So start with the mockup. Imagine you already have a JSON API. Fuck. I will be stopping the stream. Okay. Thanks for watching, guys.